U.S. officials say there's no indication it is carrying...
The beginning of a nuclear war will be announced on the news. The beginning of a cyber war most likely will not. In fact, when it begins, there will be no news at all. The first thing you'll notice is that the television no longer works. The radio too. The internet is also down, and while we're at it, you probably can't turn on your TV at all. The electricity is gone. The water and the central heating are gone too, if you're lucky. If you're not, your faucet is blasting poisonous chemicals. And the heating pipes have blown up and flooded the entire neighborhood with boiling water. The hospitals, the schools, and every last business are down. Public transport is down too, and you won't get very far in a car. It's the apocalypse we all know from the movies, but it wasn't caused by a zombie virus, an asteroid, or a giant monster. It was caused by several well-targeted cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. There's only one thing that can match the devastation of such an attack: a good old nuclear strike. For decades, they were the sum of all fears, and now we're slowly starting to fear cyber attacks even more. And this has some implications. So here's the story of how the world is going cyber mad. The scenario we just discussed is horrific, but it's also surprisingly plausible. To pull off such an attack, an army of hackers has to infiltrate several crucial systems we all depend on and take them down. Is it plausible? Well, the experts think so.
So if I were going to do something, I would attack power and water. I would also attack communications, and I would attack banking. I'd go after your physiological needs, then I'd go after your safety and security needs, and then I would compound that then with additional attacks. So for it to be effective and to achieve what you want, it's not always necessarily destroying something, but if I can throw a society into chaos.
Is it going to be a case where, you drop a nuclear bomb and all of a sudden, there's a city decimated? Well, no. But it could absolutely cause a city to become decimated in another way, where there's no services. As you mentioned, the water's all turned off, or, heaven forbid, a nuclear power plant is shut down and has a meltdown. And then you could have, even tremendous disasters, kind of like the nuclear bomb type things.
But a single cyber attack could take out critical infrastructure for an entire country. That would be very difficult to successfully launch an attack of that scale, but I think it is absolutely possible.
Sure, an all-out cyber war isn't as devastating as a full-fledged nuclear war, but rebuilding civilization from such a massive infrastructure takedown wouldn't be an easy task either. All the information you store in digital form is gone. Bank records, personal records, every last bit of financial information that makes markets work. The world would descend into chaos for years, if not decades, until some semblance of economy can be restored. It's a scenario no one would like to experience. Regular people would lose the comfort of their lives and the prospect of a bright future. Companies would lose countless billions in revenue, and governments would face the risk of complete implosion. This total cyber war seems like something we should really try to avoid. It's in everybody's best interest to keep attackers out of their infrastructure and secure it as much as possible, right? So, are we there yet? Successful attacks on critical infrastructure do happen. A lot. In May 2023, Microsoft revealed that communication networks across the Pacific were infiltrated by a Chinese state hacker group known as Volt Typhoon. It tapped major communication nodes and stayed there, vacuuming crucial intelligence data. On the surface, it was a successful spying effort, which also had an additional effect. The attackers did all they could to gain full control of the networks without being detected, which means they had their finger on the shutdown button for months. May 2023, a Danish cybersecurity watchdog detected a massive attack against the country's infrastructure. It caught Sandworm, a hacking arm of Russian military intelligence, which broke into 22 companies that were responsible for managing power plants, transmission networks, and distribution centers. Part of the attack was stopped, but not all of it. For a brief period, the Russians took over the majority of Denmark's electricity grid and had a chance to shut it down whenever they wanted. In February 2024, a leak of internal documents by Isun, a Chinese spyware manufacturing company, was posted online. Among thousands of documents were logs showing the company's employees infiltrated LGU+, the second largest mobile network provider in South Korea. Once again, the attackers were inside the company where they could do unspeakable damage, possibly shutting down communications across South Korea. But they didn't. Those hackers who breached the Danish electricity grid, they didn't try to shut it down either. And Volt Typhoon, who had a capability to disable the entire US communications infrastructure in the Pacific, never pressed the button. These are just 3 examples. A lot more get reported every week. And how many never get reported? By the way, painting it as just a feature of Russia and China is not entirely fair. There's more than enough evidence that the United States and its allies are conducting offensive cyber operations of their own, but being a bit more quiet about it.
Do I think we have the same capability? Absolutely. Will we hear about it? Only when there's only when something bad happens. You never hear about the good stuff. You only hear when something goes wrong, not when something goes right.
So the US and the West is often very quiet about their cyber offensive capabilities, but we are starting to see more of that come to light. The first publicly known offensive cyber op of the United States was conducted by US Cyber Command, and that was in December of 2021. We also just recently heard confirmation from General Nakasone, who spearheaded the US Cyber Command. In June 2022, he said that the US was in fact conducting cyber ops against Russia in support of Ukraine. We often see that the US is disrupting and dismantling cyber operations of our adversaries. So those are typically the strategic goals of the US and other countries, I would say, is they're trying to keep adversaries out and maintain a strong defensive posture, more so than trying to cause any harm to their adversaries. Persistence is incredibly important in cyber operations.
Let's stop here for a bit. Have you noticed this word? Persistence. It's an incredibly important part of modern, large-scale cyber operations, and it's what separates your regular cyber criminals from the big guys. Rogue regimes, criminals of every flavor, hacktivists, and the like, they attack critical infrastructure as well, and they often try to do as much damage as possible. Sometimes they even succeed. But their gains are temporary, and even though they sometimes cause millions of dollars in damage, that's peanuts in comparison to a full-fledged cyber war. To wage that, you need persistence. It's an ability to not only break into a system, not only steal data from it, but stay inside without being detected. A regular cybercriminal would compromise the system and immediately exploit it for profit, stealing data and trying to sell it, encrypting everything and demanding ransom, or just vandalizing the place. But for a hacker army backed by a major state, blowing perfectly good access on just one attack is a bit wasteful. Keeping a low profile and maintaining access in case they want to carry out an attack in the future would seem like a much better strategy. So where does this leave us? A world where major powers are constantly trying to get into the position where they can cause harm to their adversaries, but stop just short of doing that. Because harm is not their priority. Being able to cause that harm is a lot more important. Wait. Isn't this something we've already seen in the past? Let's go back. Far, far back. All the way back to the 1800s. This is Hiram Maxim, a British-American engineer who invented the curling iron, the fire sprinkler, an airplane that lands on rails, and a cure for asthma that doesn't work. But those aren't the inventions that made him famous. He was immortalized thanks to this. A machine gun. A device that killed millions of people with industrial efficiency. And when he was told that his invention was going to make wars even more dreadful, he replied that no, it's going to make wars impossible. Supposedly, this weapon would be so horrible, so devastating, that no one would willingly attack a power that wielded it, or even use it against other human beings. And if both sides of the conflict wielded the machine gun, nobody would start a war. Peace ensues. This is the concept of mutually assured destruction. Maxim was not the first to refer to it, and far from the last. During the Cold War, these letters became the main political and military strategy major countries adopted. Some say this is the only reason World War III never happened, or at least not in the way world wars happened before. Maybe this is true, maybe not. All we know is that the leading superpowers believed it to be true, and that's why it worked. The world changed a lot since then. Nuclear fears are still there, but for a layperson, they're not really on the agenda anymore.
Social Security numbers of 143 million Americans may have been exposed.
That spot is occupied by the anxieties of the cyber age. Don't click on random links is the new duck and cover. Could it be that infiltrating the infrastructure of your adversary, staying there, keeping your hand on the button, and waiting for a chance to strike is the way countries are doing the arms race now? Yeah, what a cliffhanger. By the way, recently our explainers are getting a lot of attention, which helps our animators, editors, writers, and other people deliver more and better content. This is why we can't thank you all enough for engaging with our content. Your feedback is what keeps us going, so don't hesitate to leave it if you feel like we should make more of this stuff. Thanks. Let's admit it. We don't know if the scenario of mutually assured destruction really works. And we for sure don't know if major cyberpowers consider it important nowadays. Nuclear deterrence involves countries openly stating that they won't hesitate to destroy the planet if attacked. We know a lot about that, and nobody hides this fact. Cyber deterrence is different. On paper, most countries claim they will stop attackers by protecting their networks with the best security practices possible. No country openly states it will take offensive cyber action if attacked. But it could be that some countries, or at least the capable ones, go one step beyond?
I think that any kind of government entity is trying to poise themselves so that they're in the better position, right? They want to be able to have access to critical infrastructure so that in the case that they might need to launch an attack, that they know they will be successful. And more importantly, they want to make sure that they can garner the information required to be strategic and successful in cyber warfare.
State-sponsored actors would probe, let's say, the Department of Defense information networks. So basically, they try to find ways to break into those firewalls. So they're doing probes. Right? You know, if I go in and do this, am I able to get in? If I'm not, why not? You know, so it's not just go do it and oops, that failed. It's learning as you're doing it. Like, why am I being, pushed back here? Why was the firewall able to withstand my efforts here? Well, I can get through this way.
Which explains a lot of attacks we discussed. When Sandworm attacked the Danish power grid, they had nothing to spy on, and may not even wanted to establish persistence. All they wanted to see is how far they can get. But what happens if the probing goes a bit too far? How do you know when to stop?
Boy, wouldn't that be something if we all knew the answer to that? Where the probing and testing ends and the real stuff begins. It's anyone's guess as to which is which. How far will a person, team, nation state, etc. go if their probing actually does what it was intended to do?
However, drawing a direct parallel between the mutually assured destruction we saw with nukes and the situation we see in cyberspace is tricky. Cyberspace is vast and complex. There are many actors, many players, and many ways everything can go wrong.
Know that mutually assured destruction works as well in cyberspace because you've got different actors. The chessboard is different. It's set up differently. So many more people can participate. Mutually assured destruction worked when the players were well known, the rules of engagement were well known, and the consequences were well known. We still don't really know the consequences of what happens in cyberspace.
What's the threshold? Are there criteria that are established? None of this exists yet. It's so common to see these cyber attacks right now that, you can't say any cyber attack means you're attacking my country, because then every country would already be at war with each other, because it's been going on for quite a while. So that's certainly not the case. But if you shut things down, does that become, well, things have been shut down, and that didn't do it. So the threshold of what becomes the declaration of war from a cyberspace attack needs to be ultimately defined, I think. And because without it, you're really going to have this ambiguous kind of, where are we? What does this mean?
Achieving a full-fledged cyber attack, the worst-case scenario, is also much more difficult than it seems. Breaking into one communication network or one telecom provider is possible, and even then, you never know when you could be detected and kicked out of there. But breaking into all of them at once? That's a much more difficult task.
There's a lot of things that have to go right in order to achieve this mutually assured destruction. How do you attack all of that at the same time? It will take an immense amount of resources to achieve this mutually assured effort. I think that maybe we're working towards that. We don't even know it.
I do believe that the larger governments in the world are capable of launching a successful attack such as that, but they don't want that reciprocated on themselves. That's the reason why the US, Russia, and China are so incredibly strategic and persistent in their cyber attacks right now, is because they want to know what their adversaries are doing so that they are also prepared if they may have to respond to such a large-scale attack.
On one hand, the fact that a full-fledged cyber war with faucets spewing poison and electrical networks going haywire is not looking too plausible is reassuring. With everything going on in the world, and the shadow of nuclear annihilation still hanging above us, we certainly don't need one more Armageddon scenario. However, is this really a good thing? After he invented the machine gun, Hiram Maxim thought it was so powerful it would bring world peace. It did not. Instead, it brought even more pain and misery. We might just be seeing the same story repeating with cyber weapons. If countries do not see attacks on themselves as serious enough of a threat, they might be a lot more eager to use their capabilities and cause more destruction in the process. And what do you think? Is it possible the Cold War scenario is repeating in cyberspace? Or are we yet to see it, as some experts suggest? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, drop us a like too. Thanks, and bye.